So good to be here. Yeah, I had to turn down an invitation to SoCap to come. That's a joke. So last night I was going through my email. Yeah, really good to be here. I was going through my email, which I haven't attended to for a while, and I found an email from Conda with a question about the description of my talk in the program. And I had written something, not just spiritual wealth, but material wealth. Something. And she was like, are you sure you didn't mean not just material wealth, but spiritual wealth? And eventually it got changed in the program to the opposite of what I'd said. Because what I'd meant to, because it's kind of a cliche that, okay, material wealth, that's maybe necessary to have a certain level of material wealth, but what's really important and what we should really focus on is spiritual wealth. And I think that distinction is actually part of the problem. So in my description, I wanted to revalidate material wealth and say that the problem in our society is not actually that we have too much material wealth. It's not even that the material wealth is concentrated in too few hands. The problem is that we have incredible material poverty in the midst of what looks like material wealth. Because we misunderstand what wealth is, what material wealth looks like. I have let's call him a distant relative, who's a very successful dentist. And he and his wife make, I don't know, probably $1 million a year in their practice. And they live lived until recently in a 4,000 square foot house in an exclusive neighborhood where all the other houses are approximately 4,000 square feet. If you guys don't know how big that is, that's like 3 times the size of my house. I guess you don't know how big that is either, but it's like big, it's a big house. Those cavernous living rooms where they're not even really quite on human scale. So actually I noticed that they spend most of their time in the breakfast nook and these spaces are unused. But now they've sold that house and they're building another house because they weren't really happy in that house. It didn't have a man cave. It didn't have the garage was only 2 cars, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're moving into, I think it's a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot house. It looks like they're getting an upgrade in their material wealth. But actually they will be impoverished even further. It was not wealth that drove, and we can generalize this across the society, it's not wealth that drives the obscene overconsumption of the few. It is poverty that drives them. Because the basic material elements of human well-being are missing across all strata of society. When I was in India, I had a conversation with a woman who grew up in a household of 500 people, spread over some compounds in a village, but pretty much everybody was in the household. Everybody was a cousin, a relative, or a servant whose family had been in the service of that family for generations sometimes, and you couldn't fire a servant. That was not, it was a lifetime commitment to take care of this person. And of course, many, many, many children, never a moment where there was not a playmate available. Never a moment for a child where there wasn't some adult who could attend to them. She said, yeah, it is no problem if you have a young child or a couple of young children to do anything that you need to do, because there's always somebody to look after your children. It's not this prison sentence that parenthood can be in this society, where there you are stuck in a box. Some of you ladies are nodding here. I was a single dad for a while, so I understand, just being in that pressure cooker box with an incredibly demanding 3-year-old whose need for connection to human beings and to nature and the material world is all concentrated on me. And it's exhausting and actually impossible to meet all those needs. So anyway, yeah, so she said, then the family got rich. And instead of all living together, everybody guided by the propaganda of the media, and media, film images of what an advanced, wealthy, happy family looks like, a nuclear family in a box. Guided by that image, they all left the communal compound and got their own apartments. Everybody's richer now, she says, but no one is as happy as they were before. So, I'm not saying here that the poor should be content with their situation, because after all, the wealthy are poor too. What I'm pointing to is a reality of poverty that if we ignore it and blame the greed, like Kondo was mentioning this endless desire to grow the realm of the separate self, the endless service of one's personal desire, the quest to maximize and expand and expand and expand self-interest. Yes, but where does that come from? If we look at that as the cause of our problems, then we will go to war against that. But it's actually a symptom. It's a symptom of scarcity, a symptom of the scarcity of what people really need. So they seek a substitute, the only substitute available, which is a bigger house, more money, more secure investments, et cetera, et cetera. What do people really need? What is the unmet need here? I think on the deepest level, wealth is the feeling of being at home in the world, the feeling of belonging, the feeling of being secure here. I was in South Africa a couple of years ago, and somehow I ended up on a business program on television. I'm not sure how it happened, but there I was with the host on national TV, and I said something like, South Africa has a quickly rising GDP, and I go to I've seen these gated communities, so-called, with the security fences. I mean, it's a big thing in South Africa, even more than here. The razor wire fences around the houses of the wealthy, and I'm like, that's not wealth. Wealth isn't that you're afraid to go outside of your house. Wealth is that you feel at home here. You feel secure here. You have a counterfeit of wealth. Yeah, given these social circumstances, it's better to have a razor wire fence than to have burglars and murderers coming into your house all the time. But this isn't what you really want. They deleted that interview from the from the website, but we have to understand if we want to actually change the setup that we have now, we have to understand the cause and not just the symptom. So what are the missing needs? The need to belong, the need for community, the need to have intimate participatory relationships with the people and the non-human beings around us. Our current economic system cuts us off from all of those things, especially the wealthy, because if you are wealthy enough, you can meet all of your obvious needs with money, and you can live in the illusion that you do not need the people around you because you can pay for it. If you do not have much money, then you have to rely on your community. So in a way, people without financial wealth are wealthier in the things that actually contribute to human well-being. Wealthier in relationships, wealthier in connections, wealthier in participation with the people around them. Am I just saying a bunch of stuff you already know? I'm getting the feeling, yeah? Of course, this speaks to a convergence between material wealth and spiritual wealth, that the two are not separate. But you know what? I'm feeling a little preachy right now, so I think I'm going to pause for a second and see where it wants to go next. It's a little hard to see your faces because the light is dim. This event is just starting. What's on your mind? Let me hear one or two inputs. Like what's bubbling here and what brought you here? Community ownership. Okay. Yeah. Homelessness, wealth disparity, yeah.
All the people that are working so hard that I know to do good in the world and struggling to make that financially work.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, two more.
I'm interested in what you just said about the poor have religion, because that is not all true.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I'm here because I'm interested in how you move the poor and we have to pay to get somewhere, pay to show up somewhere.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You're not rich. You're isolated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. And one more? Yeah?
I want to gut check how much of this we can do with capitalism and how much some other way.
Yeah. Maybe I'll play off the the comment about, and I'll paraphrase here, that so much of, we talked a little bit yesterday we did a day-long event called Money and Love, talking about just how almost universal it is that money guides us in the opposite direction from love. That people in society who join in the extraction and exploitation of other beings make a very good living at it, especially if you are talented and effective in exploiting and extracting. Whereas people who serve the well-being of Gaia and the healing of society, who serve the cause of justice, somehow there's not that much money in that, is there? Like, that's not the best way to get rich, to go into homeless advocacy or ecosystem regeneration. Now, why is that? After all, money is supposed to be an embodiment of society's valuing. So why are the things that are most valuable and most needed not reinforced by money, and the things that are actually causing harm, there's tremendous money in that? That leads us to the nature of the money system and, as this gentleman pointed out, to capitalism. I could maybe go into that a little bit. Why it is? It has to do with the design of the money system, essentially, that rewards, has to do with the way that the financial system works and the banking system and the money creation system, which creates money through lending. So, say I'm the bank. I am the entire banking system, and I lend everybody $1 million. That is, so every one of you get $1 million, okay? That is all of the money in the universe I've just lent into existence. But everybody owes me $2 million because there's interest on this money. So everybody's got $1 million, but in 10 years, you've got to give me $2 million back. Where are you going to get that extra $1 million? From each other. Because that's all the money there is. So already you are in automatic competition with each other, desperately trying to get that extra $1 million. Because if you don't get it, then your kids go hungry. There's tremendous pressure on this, on you to do this. So maybe a particular one of you, maybe you're young, you're smart, you're aggressive, you're talented, and you're going to provide goods and services to your friends, and you're going to pay me back that $2 million, and you're going to have a few million left over for yourself. But not everybody can do that, no matter how smart you are, no matter how aggressive you are, no matter how competitive the educational system makes you, no matter how equal your opportunity is. Like all of these things that you hear in the political discourse about how we have to make America more competitive or make our schools more competitive or create equal opportunities for everybody, if the rules of the game already have baked into the cake the poverty and bankruptcy of half the people, and it's not half, this is a simplified example, then it doesn't matter. We're still addressing the symptoms. Once upon a time, okay, actually there's a little bit more to the story, and then I'll tell you another story. So actually what happens after 10 years is that everybody can pay me back, or most of you can, because in that interim, I've lent even more money into existence. I've lent an additional $1 million each into the economy, but that comes with even more interest. But that's okay, because when that comes due, I will have lent even more money into the economy. So as long as I keep doing that, the system works. So the second part is, who do I lend money to? I don't actually end up just lending $1 million each. I lend it to those of you who I think are going to be able to pay me back, who I think are going to be able to find some way to extract from the land, from the sea, and from society, from other places. That's where the money goes. So the system works as long as it's growing. Growth means more and more goods and services are exchanged for money. So if you want money, you're going to have to participate in the extraction of goods and services, in the conversion of nature into goods and the conversion of relationships into services. If you do that well, then you make money. If you don't participate in that, if you do things that actually uncreate goods and services, for example, a lot of money to be made in going somewhere where people take care of each other's kids and instituting mandatory child care, which is called school, or other child care. Like, you can open a child care center and do that. A lot of money to be made by going into a place where there's a traditional culinary culture, where people cook traditional foods for each other and pass that knowledge down through generations and take care of each other in that way. And if you go into that place, you can say, wow, that is a business opportunity. If we could de-skill these people and destroy their culture, then there's a market for restaurants, for frozen food, for supermarket deli takeout, that kind of thing, for junk food. So go to a place where people, like this would be true in India and all over the world, where people still build their own houses, sing their own songs, create their own culture, source their own medicine from the land. All of these are business opportunities that are driven by the necessity to find more and more and more lending opportunities, the creation of new goods and services. So we have this vast machine that converts life, literally converts life into money, thereby impoverishing us and driving the greed that I referred to in the story at the beginning. It also drives all kinds of social injustice, including racism. So, once upon a time, there was an orphanage. And the orphanage had lots of little black kids and lots of little white kids. Well, one day, the headmaster of the orphanage decided that he wanted to make a little bit more money from the enterprise. Why? You know, actually, maybe he is under pressure to fulfill his debt obligations too. You know, Cortez, the conqueror of the Aztec empire, was deeply indebted. And as soon as he took over and established these kind of landlords, he put them under huge pressure to render payments to him. I mean, it was all to satisfy his own creditors. Like, the whole thing, like, you try to find the bad guy to blame, and it takes you back and back and back and back until you get to a system that encompasses everything. So anyway, the orphanage, the headmaster, right? So he cuts the food ration by 10%. So now these kids, none of them quite have enough food. So maybe the white kids are in the majority, so they get together and they take more than their share of food so that the black kids even have less. And the black kids are like, look at them. They're eating enough and we're not eating enough just because we're black. And so they have a black power movement to take back their fair share. And some of the whites sympathize with them, and some of them then see that their own share is going to be diminished. And they have white power and white supremacy. And they fight back and forth. And the headmaster's like, good. I'm sure glad they're paying attention to that instead of to me. So ultimately, it's not that, I'm not saying that racism is just an effect of economics. It's more like a necessity and an enabler of the economic system. But I'm just pointing to the need to go to deeper and deeper and deeper levels of cause. So yeah, that's the situation we're in as we seek to align with, I call it a more beautiful world, that is not in alignment with the money system that we have right now. Now, so all the stuff about, yeah, let's create cooperatives, let's create community capital. The cynic in me says, but we're still swimming against the stream of the overall economic system. Same thing with environmentalism. Let's protect the rainforests. Let's protect the watersheds. Let's stop the drilling, stop the pipelines. Yes, and we are again swimming against the stream because the pressure to grow that's fueled by the debt-based system is relentless. Nonetheless, these local, community-based, non-systemic attempts to create different conditions are still important for a couple reasons. One is that they hasten the collapse of the financial system. Because remember, the system only works if I can keep lending more and more money into existence. It only works if there are more and more lending opportunities for me to do that. It only works if the economy measured in dollars is going to keep growing. So if you, 10 minutes, got it? If you take part of that and say, no, this part will not be colonized. This river will not be dammed. This well will not, this oil will stay in the ground. This community will recover its culture of taking care of each other. Then you're depriving the growth machine of food. It will, because as soon as I stop lending out money, as soon as there's no lending opportunities, then the debts cannot be paid and the system falls apart. So by doing this work to protect and restore ecology and society, you are hastening the collapse of the system. And you're also preserving wealth from which a new world can grow. Because there's still going to be people who know how to cook. There's still going to be communities that know how to take care of each other. There's still going to be biodiversity that we can source our wealth of relationship from. Another reason why this kind of work is important is that it provides a different model and a different way of thinking, a different reality. It says that it doesn't have to be the way that we've been taught, the way that we've seen it our whole lives, because here's a living counterexample that's not theoretical, but I'm actually seeing it. I'm actually seeing a different kind of human nature that is hard to see in a scarcity-based economy, in the current economy of artificial scarcity that pits us into competition for never enough money. Like under those circumstances, anyone who violates the rules of self-interest maximization is seen as a saintly person or an altruist or somebody who's achieved some kind of spiritual goal. But in a society that has different rules, a different kind of human nature grows. Like why is it that if you go to a favela in Brazil, perhaps, or a traditional African-American community in the South, why is it that the people there are so generous? They have nothing, but they still are willing to give. Why? Is it because they're just better than you are? No. Well, in a way, maybe yes, but that's because the circumstances have given them resource and that sense of belonging that are unavailable to people living in the money economy. Because maybe their whole lives they've seen other people being generous. Their whole lives they've seen that even if you give everything, people will still take care of you. So if that has been your lived experience, then you will be generous too. Well, in the conventional society, we get taught the opposite in many ways, that you've got to look out for yourself, that well-being and security come from how much you control. So creating, even if it's in the flood tide of monetization, if you can create an island where we can get at least a glimpse of a different human nature that comes out in relationship, that comes out in community, that comes out in, call it the we economy, then that experience of cooperation, of generosity, of taking care of each other lodges in the heart, works on our perceptions, and it no longer seems so inevitable that we must live in a world of ever-increasing competition, ever-increasing poverty, where wealth depends on enclosing at least some of it for yourself. And we do have to deprogram from that set of perceptions because it's killing the earth. So I think that, you can have economic theories and thoughts about how, okay, so worker-owned co-ops, how are we going to scale them up? How are we going to spread them? How are we going to make them go viral? And there's this idea that, unless this idea or this model takes over everything, then it's hopeless. But the power of this movement is not dependent on it quickly undoing capitalism. The change happens on a much more subtle, mysterious timeline than that. And its essence is in connecting us with a possible future that seems real to us, that becomes a compass for our choices in life, and that can be transmitted to others. We are bringing in a glimpse of a new reality, making it real to us. And if your project is simply a small social enterprise or a co-op or a time bank or some way of restoring ways of living in relationship and taking care of each other, even if it has no possibility of going viral, no possibility in your mind of somehow translating into systems change, it is powerful nonetheless. Because systems don't change the way we think that they change. If we are limited to the force-based theory of change that says that only the big, powerful people with lots of money and lots of hierarchical power can make a big change in the world, then it's hopeless. Because the powerful people with the guns, with the money, with the media, they're not going to lead the change. But when we embrace what Rupert Sheldrake calls morphic resonance, that says that any change that happens in one place generates a field of change that makes that change happen more easily everywhere else, then we know that every action has global significance, even if it seems invisible. Even if it's something that just happens in your home, in your community. The building of cooperation and mutuality creates a field of cooperation and mutuality. The exercise of compassion creates a field of compassion. And without you knowing how, you find that it's starting to happen elsewhere too, as if they somehow found out about it and they were inspired to do the same thing, or maybe it is that their dream entered your dream. So all we need to do is to serve the dream that comes to us, that inspires us with its beauty. And I'm not saying that we should forget about systems change or forget about political engagement with the existing authorities. I'm just saying not to privilege that over the things that we don't understand how they will change the world, but we feel at that moment, this is the most important thing I could be doing right now. And I'll just end by saying that to rest in that knowledge that we are in an intelligent universe in which everything matters is itself a kind of wealth that cannot be stripped away from you by any outside power, that people, even in the most materially impoverished circumstances, can claim and exercise as their right. And that through our generosity and service, we can transmit to other people. Yeah, cool. So the thing is, like, this, what I've been speaking about is a knowledge and a consciousness. Like in the beginning, I said, like, am I just saying stuff you already know? Like, yeah, you already know it. So rather than have a Q&A directed at me, I thought we could do a crowdsource Q&A because the place that I'm speaking from is so available now to all of us. Namely, the place, speaking from a place of knowing that a more beautiful world is possible, knowing that the reality that has been presented to us is so inevitable, that $18 trillion of debt, the place of knowing that's just a number that could be abolished, the place of knowing through the experiences you've had what the world could be, what human nature really is. Like we all, each one of us in this room, I am certain of it, has that knowing. And that knowing is perhaps surrounded by doubts and suppressed by trauma and just peeking out from the cracks, but it is there. So we'll divide up into pairs. One of you will ask a question from that place of, how could we possibly get there? What about this poverty? What about this injustice? What about the military-industrial complex? What about white supremacy? What about... You'll ask a question from there. The other person will answer from that knowing. Answer from that glimpse you've had of a future that you knew was real in that moment, even if you had no idea how we'll get there. But you know that it is an actual place that exists. And you'll respond to the question from that.